Welcome to another edition of Low-Code Campfire. This is episode number 158 for August 9, 2024. This is the one where we start late. Patrick is out this week, and I had a conflicting appointment for the 10 o'clock hour, so we pushed it a little bit late. Hope, for those of you who are watching this on replay and couldn't make it, sorry we had to reschedule. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plant an App. This is an event that we do every week, every Friday, usually at 10 a.m. Central. And we get together and talk about Plant an App and low coding experiences. And we hope to solve the challenges that you face as you work with the product. We record all these, put them out on YouTube. So youtube.com/plantanapp, you can get to those. We run this agenda. We say hello for a moment, and then we go around the campfire. Anybody who has something that needs something that you're bringing and you'd like to talk about, we call that first call. We'll do first call, and if you've submitted in advance, we'll do those too. We touch on a few other topics, but the main thing, an hour into the event, we'll turn off the recording, go into our afterglow segment, and just enjoy each other for a few more minutes. So please do engage with us, jump in, show us what you've got going on. You can submit questions and topics in advance, or you can just send an email to support@plantanapp.com, and we'll add it to the list if there's something you want to talk about. Hello, hello.
Hello, Dale.
Mark.
Don, Mark.
All right, we're going to jump right in. Does anybody have a first call? Something you'd like to talk about first? While you're thinking about that, I had some interesting support cases that came up over the week and brought me into areas of the DNN platform that I hadn't been before. So thought that if with nothing else, I'm going to share what I learned about that. All right, I'm going to drive then. First question, we're currently using version 126. 126 was released coming up on 2 months ago. We've had some updates to it, and it is I think one of the better releases that we've had. We had a couple of people that were impacted with some things which we're getting fixed, but mostly very good release. Anybody using it? Anybody have anything to say about it? And here comes Matt, who I've got one of the tough support cases that I've got going on right now. So yeah, hello, Matt.
You can say that again.
Hello.
Anyone with any comments or questions or issues on 126?
I'm too busy building this. I haven't been back for a while, and so no, I have got 126 on one of my systems, but it's more of a test platform than anything else. I do a couple of things with it besides testing, but it's working. All of the automation is all working, so I'm happy to see that.
Good. Well, thanks for that report. I'm watching the adoption numbers a little bit, seeing it's happening slowly. I haven't really done a great comparison, but that might actually be a nice dashboard I could do one of these days. Percentage on which versions. I guess while we're talking about versions, I'll mention we're moving towards being more proactive in requesting that you upgrade. Part of that is that we're setting a timeline. We've always supported our versions for at least a year going back, and now we're putting that in as a recommendation on our Learn page, on our documentation site, the compatibility page. We're providing support for different versions, and we note the date based on when we release it. So highly recommend you stay within the release dates for support purposes. Since we're looking at this, I'll mention too, Our on 126 is the last version that SQL Server 2012 is the minimum SQL. That's going up, I believe, to 2016, 2017. I can't recall, but trying to stay within. I mean, 2012 is out of service from Microsoft's perspective, so we want to move up our minimums. All right, I'm going to jump on to the next thing. Last week we had a great discussion with Mark, and Mark was having trouble with a PayPal Express checkout password issue. We kind of stumbled onto something right after the meeting last week, and I was just going to check back with you, Mark, and see if that that direction was the solution to the issue.
Yes, it defined the problem. I don't know why it's happening, but it's something on my own system. You can go ahead and, I mean, you were good about getting ready to tell the details. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention we kind of the short version of what we talked about last week was that the PayPal Express action seemed to just kind of spontaneously stop working. It might be working with the action a little bit in the editor. You save on it, and the next thing you know, it's not working. And on a hunch, I asked a question from Mark, and he confirmed some details. And anyway, it's pointing to a password manager on the browser, trying to fill in the password for whatever. I mean, he was noticing that the password was getting changed to some old password that had nothing to do with PayPal, but was one familiar to him. And so I think the password manager was jumping in and filling in a password, even though you weren't trying to change a password. And so that was kind of an unfortunate, hey, the technology just whacked you. The solution was just to grab and get the right password into from PayPal and put it right onto the action, and then it would go back to working correctly.
A little extension on that. My solution thus far has been to use a different browser to do it, because if I use Chrome, it's gonna throw the wrong password in there. But if I use something else, it does not.
Are you using
Mark,
Chrome's password manager?
I turned it off,
Yeah.
and something is still doing it.
so
So
you were using the Chrome password manager, and that was doing it?
No, I had that turned off. It is not that. It might be an extension to Chrome, but I don't know. I don't think I have one that does passwords, and no form filler either. So I am not sure.
So anyone watching me navigate around, you'll see me. If you have it, I use RoboForm to remember all my passwords. So many passwords these days, you got to have some kind of strategy. So
One password is my tool.
yeah, see, so you got to have something, and then if they misbehave and try and fill in a password when you don't have an empty password, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, so it was hard to detect because the password for the PayPal API is obfuscated. You know, it's just a bunch of dots.
Right.
And so when it gets changed, it's just dots. So
You can't see that it's been changed.
That's right.
Well, what we ended up
Subtly.
debugging,
Yeah.
what we ended up debugging step was to grab the config file of the action before. I mean, you can export the action, right, using the export functionality of Plantinap, and it's a JSON configuration, so it's very readable. And then exporting the configuration after when it started misbehaving. And that's where we could see, we were wondering, just the question was what changed between here and there, and turned out the password changed. And once you're seeing it in JSON, you can see the password in clear text. And so Mark could recognize that it was a password change, and perhaps that it came on from his side.
I believe it did. And thank you for working so hard on that, Dale.
The only thing was, that it came in the few minutes after Campfire was over, so we had to close the loop on it this week. But hey, talking about working so hard, I wanted to point out for any of you that ever open support tickets, actually, I'm going to drag it from over here someplace. I am working on something that you're all going to see shortly. Actually, you can start seeing it now. When you enter a support ticket and when you close a support ticket, you're now going to get the opportunity to provide a rating score from 1 star to 5 stars, anywhere in between. You get to pick. You can also provide notes, and then you just hit save score. You can change it at any time. So if you decide that you got great service, but then you decide a month later that I'm too annoying, then you can just come back in and lower all the ratings. And then from our side, we can see the same thing, but we can't change it. So I can't. I will know what you said about me, but I won't be able to change it. So anyway, you're going to start seeing emails from us after you close a ticket asking you to come back in and click a star, and we sure would appreciate it if you tell us what you're thinking about us and whether we can do anything better.
Okay, dude.
I may go back just for a few closed tickets and send some emails out on those as well. So just to start getting some data in here. I guess it's also a fair comment if the emails are too annoying, you can let us know that too. But we like a few data points. We're trying to come up with some KPIs that tell us we're moving in the right or the wrong direction and try and get better. All right, this is the spot where you got to say come up with something. Otherwise, I'll wander off into my next topic.
I guaranteed we'll remember something I want to ask about 5 minutes before closing time.
All right. So Ben is here. We can talk about Ben's contribution. On campfire.plantainapp.com, we have a site where you can contribute things, useful bits of information. Sometimes they're small, sometimes they're huge, but useful bits of information that somebody can follow in your footsteps and do things. So Ben created a token that you can click and download the token, and this will tell you the SQL that's behind an action grid. So this, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the core SQL, not with the filters applied, not with the values substituted in if you're loading
Correct.
values.
So this is just going to pull out the SQL code that you put in that box for the data source, and that's it.
But that's a great start. You can, I assume you use this in some way.
But I use this a lot, actually. How do I put this? Mainly for one type of situation, but it's a situation that happens often. I've written reports that pull out a whole bunch of data using SQL, throws it up on a grid. There is sometimes, in many cases, my client wants an automation to kick off some sort of a notification when said report data has some sort of an issue. So if, let's say, one of the column values returns 0 records and it's not ever supposed to do that, or something like that, so they want to be aware of it. So what I've had to do was then write an automation. And initially what I was doing was I was copying the source code from the data source of my grid, putting it into a SQL command action in an automation. But then there were situations where then they wanted new fields in the grid or this or that, and then they wanted to change the automation to boot. And I had to maintain that code in 2 spots, and it just got really cumbersome. So by using this, what I do is I just literally use this code. It pulls out the SQL, and then I just do text manipulation where needed. So sometimes what I have is in my SQL code, I have blocks of code that are commented. So they'll have the double dash in front. And those commented sections are only for the automation portion to run. So what I'll do is in the automation, after I pull the SQL, I will uncomment those items and then run that SQL text. And then it will pull out data slightly differently, maybe more aggregated so that the automation can run. But at least that way, there's just one location that I have to maintain that SQL code, and I don't have to worry about, where else did I use this.
So just for fun, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and implement this, and we'll see what it does for you. So you've got to click here to be able to download. It's a token. I'm going to put it right into the Campfire website. So we go to the tokens area and import that token, and look in this tech area, and
that section keeps getting bigger.
it does. Get a data. Oh, there it is. I couldn't even, I don't even know what I'm doing here. So we have a token. We can try and run it. It needs a module ID, so value doesn't do it. But I'm just going to copy this, and let's create a simple listing on Ben's demo page here. And then we'll see that it works. So if we were to add a grid, we'll just display some users here, for example. So very simple grid. Thing we're going to need to know is how to spell grid and this 1698. So we'll add some fields, user ID, username, display name, just enough to get the grid to work here. So we could put a button, for example, on here that displays shows the SQL. So we'll say show SQL, and what's the best way to do this? So we're going to use Ben's token and that number 1698. This formatter is biting me.
The escape, you can delete that if you don't want it. Escape single quotes.
That's either a true or a false, right?
Correct. And it defaults to false, and you could just remove the whole entire thing, and it makes the token shorter to call. You really only need it if you're saying true.
Yep.
And the only reason I added that, if anyone cares to know, is if you're, let's say, writing SQL that is going to be used against like an Oracle database and you're using an open query command, single quotes have to be double escaped, because originally this already does the escaping once, but because it requires double escaping, if you say true, it'll do that double escape so that the SQL that returns can be sent to an open query without a problem.
And so we see it show up here as a toast. Just that token anywhere you need it, can grab it from, you just have to know the module ID. Cool. All right. So thanks for contributing that. We slowly grow, 92 different contributions. I was just talking this week. We're reorganizing a little bit to call what I do part of customer service and the education things, the campfire, the cafe, plus our delivery team. We're going to call, and technical success managers. We're not the delivery team. I don't know, but we're going to call the whole thing customer success. So I'm talking to Radu Kulcha, who was Radu Florescu, who was joined us last week, talking a little bit about customer success, and he's very impressed the fact that you guys contribute on these. We're going to try and get our team to contribute and to draw from these as well, because I think they have a lot of tips that they probably use within the delivery team that would be useful. So we're going to try and do more with that, but there we go.
Sounds good.
I've submitted a talk for the upcoming DNN Summit, so we're going to all be in Vegas or virtual, whichever you prefer to do. But if you can get to Vegas, that would be great to see people together. And my topic, one of them, is titled "I Get By." So if you know the old Beatles song, you know where I'm going with that. And it's all about cooperation of the people that are, well, technically we're competitors, but it's a huge field. And so the people I help usually don't know about you guys and vice versa. And we're all out there building things and sharing our knowledge and all of that. And I'll be talking about that. And of course, Campfire will be one of the examples. I've got about, I don't know, a dozen of them, various people in the DNN community that's helped me over the years. So that's one of the topics that I've submitted. So we'll see if Mark and Mitchell and the other guys deem it worthy to be at Summit. I'll be talking about you guys.
That's great, Don.
I think, yeah, this is a great time. Glad you brought up DNN Summit. Bogdan and I submitted 4 or 5 topics as well. And so again, waiting to hear from the event organizers, but we'll be pleased to do that. And I hope Vegas turns out, because while it's nice doing this virtual with you guys week by week, it'll be nice to do an in person. And Matt owes me 2 beers now, so this is an opportunity. And yeah, we'll see how that all shakes out.
That's great.
So one of the support directions that I got into this week was somebody who was doing a multi-language site. And so I kind of went off into the deep end with multi-language yesterday. Does anybody have any interest in exploring that a little bit? I mean, it's a pure DNN topic, less of a Plantinap topic, but if you...
Si, senor.
Okay. I see what you did there. Let me close down stuff first so I don't get confused where I am. Here it is. Okay. So this site was set up for, I set it up for 2 languages. The confusion had to do with the client had 3 pages set up, or 3 main navigation things. And for some reason, when he was hovering, he changed the home page. That was one thing, and didn't change it correctly for some of the languages. The result being that it wasn't pointed. You'd click a page, and instead of going to page 2, it would go to page 3 because of the defaulting for the home page. So we're trying to imagine this without actually loading the site up, and I wasn't getting anywhere, so I created a site that had this. So the site has 3 pages, the home page and page 2 and page 3. All these are in English. If I switch over to Espanol. Notice that they come in Spanish. And we have a different, the menu name is slightly different, but that's just because I accepted its default, but everything works. So let's go in and
Wait, that's Spanish?
well, as close as I get. Were you being funny
Well,
or?
no, honestly, like page 3, page 2, it translated that to Spanish?
Oh no. No,
Oh, okay.
when I created, actually, we should let's do French too, because that way we can just kind of see the process. So
I've never used it, so I'm just curious because I'm like, should it
yeah,
be translating the page names
no,
as well? And
it makes it possible for you to have a translation. It doesn't do the translation, and there's
okay.
some things that I think the language perhaps does. But anyway, let's do one. So in site settings, and by the way, it's great to have a throwaway DNN implementation to try this out on, because I think there's some warnings in here that if you turn on this thing, hey, you're gonna forever irreversibly impact your site. And so maybe you don't want to do this unless you've tried it on an offline site. Anyway, so I just came in here and added a new language. Let's see if we can find French on the list. Lots of English. Here we go, Francais. Oh yeah, we'll do Canada. So having done that, let's see, there was also this button that says enable localized content. So when I went from one language to two, I enabled localized content. That got me, that was necessary in order to have differences. And then see, there's this icon here. What does this mean? It doesn't give me a hover, but this is the page. This is translation. This is translation page. So we're going to go to the translation page, and by default, it doesn't have a translation, any translation pages. Let's step through this. If I, having enabled this, I should get another, oh, I don't. See, I still don't know what I'm doing. Notice I still only have 2 flags up here. So let's create the translation pages. Again, this is site settings, languages. And I go to my Francais, and I said add all unlocalized pages. And so now it's creating pages for me. So it's creating a home page in French, an activity feed, a 404. All these pages are getting created. So it's creating base pages for me. So doing nothing more than that, let's see what we get. So now we have another flag icon up here, and we have a menu that's working. Notice that it adds the country code to the name just to differentiate it at the start. So part of what you would do would be to come up with what these names really should be. But then notice it's pre-populated it with the default English content. So these are actually separate pages as far as DNN is concerned, and so we can edit the content and change it. Show off my French.
So far, it looks like it created additional pages. There wasn't any translation going on just yet, right?
Right. So having created those things, and I think there's some tools that are here to help you with that a little bit, to kind of guide you to make sure, but you have to visit all these pages that get created and provide the translation. And that can be a couple of things, like these HTML things. Maybe you would put in the true content.
Yeah.
in the page that I was working on, they had an action grid showing content from the database, and depending on which language you're looking at, it showed different content. So that was kind of cool. So trying to work out the logistics of showing the data in a different language. So now
A number of how-to videos. Adderson has one out there on YouTube, and Clarity has one on there. Will Stroll has one on there. Just go to YouTube and look up multi-language, install multi-language on DNN, and they'll walk you through the details. I think you're right about the different modules. My understanding is that it just creates, in effect, a different site where you can you have a version of every module, you have a version of every page, and you can customize them. Whereas if you do just a simple Google Translate, it just goes and takes the HTML of the page and gives you whatever, and you just take whatever that translation is. But if you want it to say something different when it's in French versus when it's in English and not just a pure word for word, then DNN is just doing it the DNN way is the way to go.
Well, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, Don, I don't think DNN itself does any translation. If you've
No, it
got
doesn't.
module with content, yeah. So when you load a language pack with DNN, what that's doing is loading primarily, things have changed, but it's been a while, but it's primarily loading kind of navigation and internal DNN references. So if you had, for instance, a French-speaking site administrator, they would, and it detects the browser language code, and then if, say, I was in Montreal, it would pick up that I had, French Canadian, and if I were to go in and log in, all of my controls associated with that language for the
Right.
administrative side would be all in French.
Exactly right.
They've provided localization. DNN provided localization for DNN. So
Right.
Yes.
So
But
all
the
these
content
buttons would be
itself you're
different.
responsible for, and you just basically get two HTML modules in effect. If here's the English one, but if you wanted something else in French, you need to write that in and write it in French, and you could write whatever you want, not just a pure translation. You could change things. Cultural references can change. All the other things can change. Even the pitch that you've got in the box can change.
So notice I go incognito and I don't have the Canadian yet, and I believe it's this that there's this visual flag to indicate that the translation has occurred. So that's, I think, to help you keep track of what do I have left to do. But then there's also whether or not it's published. So I think if I update this and then reload this page, I think that we'll start seeing. Nope, I still don't know what I'm doing. So apparently this is not published yet. The other thing that, again, the specific problem that the client was dealing with that I had to figure out was that when you're working on site settings now, you have flags up here as well. And so the home page change refers to the flag that you've got clicked. So if I wanted to make page 2 the home page, you'd have to do it and save it and do it for the different languages. That each language can have a different home page associated with it, and they probably changed one and didn't change it in all cases. And then, so now I've changed it in all cases, and I go off to browse, and so now the root is taking me to page 2, and we're getting the correct ones on page. So page 2 is the no URL selection. Let's see if it did the thing here. If I go Yep, these are all working as expected. When you don't change it, and then you can get into browser caching issues as well, where because you changed it for one language and didn't change it for another language, now the root ends up being confused where to go, and so I ended up having to clear the browser cache in order to complete that change of the page view. Anyway, so thanks, Don, for your suggestion to view that to view some videos, because obviously this is just introducing the fact that it's there and people can struggle with it. I'm sure there's lots more nuances than what I've gotten into.
The thing that we've realized, most of our clients, when you tell them what you're really doing is you're doubling or tripling or quadrupling, depending on how many languages you want to support. You're multiplying the amount of work and effort, therefore the cost of the development of the site, because you have to go and build each of the pages, one in each language. You have to build the modules. You have to edit it all like that. And more importantly, they then have to maintain it. So if they want to make a change to a page in English, then they have to go and do that in Spanish and French and whatever other languages they put in there. So they almost invariably jump to, why don't you throw that Google Translate script on there, and it's good enough, and
Yep.
it's really not. I agree. This is the most flexible, the way to do it, but it does add a bunch of work to your development.
And in the sites that one of our customers is a big international organization, a government organization, and in their case, first of all, I assume they have the money, but the second part is it has to be right. So in some cases, you just really have to bite the bullet and provide that multiple language support, and then in other cases, it's like a convenience thing. I want to be able to sell you my wares, and you need to be able to understand well enough to be able to buy, but it doesn't have to be precise. So, cool. I may have come to the end of my topic, so it's really important to if you had anything you want to talk about, now's the time. Watch for hot fixes. There are a few hot fixes that we've released, and so you should be seeing some on your sites. Just a quick reminder that we always recommend that you have an effective backup before you install anything, our product or any others. But yeah, then you come to updates and go to hotfixes, and you can either select all and say install all, or partial. A couple of things that are coming down the pike. We have I just did the work on this today. I get involved in user acceptance testing on different things, and so there's come on, let me drag you around here. Okay. Our page builder menu has finally been updated, and I think some of you use this. Come on, let me find, where's the handle here? I can't find the handle. All right, let's do it another way. I don't know why I couldn't narrow this out. Anyway, we fixed this navigation. In the past, Page Builder would, as you're trying to browse these, it wasn't rendering very well at all. It was completely unusable. And so you're trying to get to a menu item and you just couldn't get there. So now it's been fixed. And so watch for that hotfix if you need any kind of mobile navigation. And the other thing is that the icons, the chevrons there on the right, used to be smaller and without much padding. So when you actually try to use it on a mobile device, it might take 3 or 4 hits to actually find the right chevron. So we've padded that out a little bit. So overall, it should be much more usable. And I guess I can test this while we're live here because we have a moment. It's supposed to respect the persona bar as well. So I'm going to try and sign on to the site and see if you don't want the navigation to blow up just because you're using persona bar. This has been awfully slow today. Anyway, that's something that's coming down, and I think for anybody that does mobile site, I think that's a useful thing. I'm seeing other things that I've been testing. We're adding some tokens that you can use to display things out of in Action Grid. So, for example, this is a button that has the token of $total results, showing the number of results. And yeah, so this isn't, yeah, I don't know. Site, my test site is subject to a little bit of variability. So anyway, so that being able to provide you some macro information about what is going on in the grid. So how many items per page and what the current item that's being displayed on the page is, and things like that are going to be available as tokens. Okay. All right, any questions? I'm going to call an early end here in just a minute.
I do have one, and it has to do with versions. You had mentioned that compatibility matrix that you had up on the screen a little while ago. All of the minimum and maximum were 9.11.2 of DNN. Actually, I guess the 9.11.0. But I'm having no trouble with 9.13.3. I think that's where it is. And 125. So
well, that's a good report.
You should go and change it, but I would love for you guys to concur. I've asked numerous times, mostly just to get the blessing, but I've traveled out there, been the pioneer, and had to get Resource Manager, a better version of it, since 9.11.2's Resource Manager is quite buggy. And it's helped, and I've not seen any errors. So hopefully you guys are doing that too.
Yeah, so
and bump that number up.
We consider that untested, but I think it's. I'm glad that, I mean, there's no problem, especially in in test environments, to go ahead and try that. And I wouldn't make a recommendation one way or the other. It's just if there are issues, we're depending on what they are, you could run into an unsupported scenario. But while we're there, I'll mention that all of our work that we're doing right now is on 127. On 127 is using 9.13 something, and so we will have a 9.13 recommendation when that one comes out. And we're working very hard for it not to be another year-long development cycle. We're trying to be months-long development cycle.
Cool.
Don, is the Resource Manager usable at that level?
It's getting better.
I'll read between those lines.
Yeah.
Thank you, Don.
Sure.
Since we touched on a couple of things with this, I'm going to, on my other screen, look at our internal site and look at what we're recommending. So for 127, the plan is that this listing will show 913.3. By the way, we've linked our documentation to our internal site, so when we release it, it comes automatically from our data. So anyway, 913.3 and the thing. The SQL Server, if I can move enough windows out of the way to find it. 2016 is where we're going. So anyway, that stuff is happening. Good question. Is 2016 going to be a problem for anybody?
No.
Right, last chance, last call now. Sorry we had to run this one for an hour later than normal, but we'll be back on our regular schedule next week. Patrick will be back. I have assurances that we're going to start seeing people from our delivery team dropping into our meeting, so maybe we can convince them, help me convince them that it'd be a good idea to share their tips and techniques on Low-Code Campfire website. Anyway, good session. We're gonna, if you have a minute, hang around for a few, and we'll talk in our Afterglow segment. Let me find the button, and we'll stop the recording. But thank you for spending your hour with us.